Hi, everyone. Welcome to our community of practice about understanding and mapping transportation burden. I can talk today. We're working with the Center for Neighborhood Technologies and the City of Phoenix today. I'll let them introduce themselves in just a moment. First, I want to give some layout of who we are and what this is. So our community of practice is a safe and brave space where we connect leaders advancing environmental justice and social equity to learn about topics that improve our work through peer learning and data literacy. Leaders can be those at the senior, middle, entry, students, etc., who are working in this field. So who we are Greenlink Analytics. We're a 501c3 located in Atlanta, Georgia. We work with energy and equity research with cities and community-based organizations around the nation. And we're working together to advance a clean energy transition as fast and as fair as possible. With that being said, we have our Greenlink equity map that you're gonna, if you haven't seen before, get to see and play around in today. But this is a visualization tool to create and make data easily accessible to everyone. It's used by over 60 cities and 103 community-based organizations. Currently has over 730 active members. I'm going to update this slide later. I checked that this morning. But with that, I'm going to pass it off. Well, I'm going to say our agenda first. I'm going to pass it off here in a moment to the Center for Neighborhood and Technologies with Peter, one of our partners, and he's going to talk about their work and our work together for this new layer. Then the City of Phoenix is going to give some insights on transportation burden in EVs. And then you're going to get some time to explore GEM's transportation burden and the tool itself. And then we'll do a Q&A with our speakers. So with that being said, I'll now pass it off to Peter.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I'm Peter Haas. I'm the Chief Analyst at the Center for Neighborhood Technology. We're a not-for-profit. If we go to the next slide, talk a little bit about so next slide coming up. It might be lagging, I don't know. There we go. So yeah, so today I'm going to just talk a little bit about who CNT is and what we're doing. I'll talk about some concepts of what transportation options and choices are and how we get to the costs of driving and taking transit, etc. I'll talk a little bit about our housing and transportation affordability index and how that's used to develop the transportation burden index that you'll see later in the GEM module. So next slide. CNT, we Center for Neighborhood Technology. We're based in Chicago in the late 70s, before my time. I guess I just started college then. So we look at helping communities use technologies in the old sense of the word, the idea of tools to tackle issues surrounding within their communities. And recently, we really expanded our focus, looking at equitable transportation and inclusive housing strategies. And my division, next slide, is called the Urban Analytics Department. And our mission within that is to develop the research tools to help planners and developers and community leaders make smart and data-driven decisions. And so what we like to say is at CNT, we like to dig in and make sure what we're talking about is supported with data. So let me talk about a little bit about the concepts here. So transportation choice. I mean, I really think about transportation. A lot of people think, well, you got to get in a car and drive somewhere, right? So that's transportation. And is that a means or an end? And obviously, it's a means to an end. And we look at a community like this. It's a little snapshot of a corner in Madison, Wisconsin. So it works in small cities and big cities. And you think about how you get around. So if you just click once, you can see that, you could walk, you could bike, you could take transit, you could call a Lyft or an Uber, you could go into that cafe and telecommute, or you could order delivery, either from Amazon or everything. And then finally, you could use a car, right? In a community like this, you wouldn't necessarily have to, but you have that option. In another community, next slide, please. like this, biking and walking is not really an option to actually get stuff done. There probably isn't any transit around. And so you're really dependent on, I'm not sure why it's not, yeah, there it goes. My little animation here. So you could call a Lyft or an Uber. You could probably telecommute or order delivery. But you're really car dependent in a community like this. And cars are expensive. They're not they're a depreciating asset. The majority of the cost of driving or of driving is owning the car. 20% of it is actually the driving. So if I look at the consumer expenditure data from 2022, the most recent one I could come up with, and you look over the last 4 years, housing is the #1 cost for typically for a household in the US. Transportation is second, food and personal, etc. But we can see that those top two, housing and transportation, are the #1 and 2 costs that most households face. And they're really location based. So what we decided to do in the early 2000s, go to the next slide, and talk about our timeline, was to see if we could tease apart how much housing costs in a certain neighborhood and what's the transportation demand and costs in that same neighborhood. So in 2006, we got a grant from the Brookings Institute, and we worked with the University of Minnesota and developed the first iteration of this in just 25 metro regions around looking at housing costs, which we can just look up from the American Community Survey, but then modeling transportation costs. So modeling how many cars people own, how much they drive them, and how much transit they take, and then putting a monetary value to that. And so by 2009, we had expanded it to all metro areas, and then in the early teens, we developed it for all metro areas and rural areas as well. And finally, one other little note here is that the Housing and Urban Development folks during the Obama administration asked us to develop another version of this called the Location Affordability Index. And if you're familiar with that, you can go online and take a look at that. But it's no longer, we had built a tool that people could look at it. And the next administration, they sort of canceled that. But the data is still available if you need that. But our last update was it's last year, or I guess it's 2 years ago now. But what so we depend on the American Community Survey, and the most recent American Community Survey was out at that point was 2020, which was a weird year because everybody had a COVID lockdown. So we went back to 2019 to look at business as usual, and our next update will be with 2022 data. So go to the next slide, and we can you can get a sense of how it is that we. So I'm going to focus on the transportation component of this from now on. But I like to think about two different concepts when you start thinking about the cost of transportation. One is the location efficiency of a place. So how is a place, how efficient is it for you to live without maybe depending on a car, right? So I think of energy efficiency. Your house is energy efficient if you can be comfortable and do everything and it costs less, right? And so the same thing here. You can get to your jobs, your school, and your entertainment and shopping, etc., without the high cost of being car dependent. And there's degrees of that, right? So the two versions I showed before were sort of polar opposites. Yeah, so what we do is we model transportation costs for a given household, so that we say this household, if they were to live anywhere in this region, this is how much they would spend. That will bring out the location efficiency. But the cost burden really depends on who the people are that are living within those communities. So we know that wealthy people can live anywhere and the cost burden is low. If we look at communities that have lower income housing, we can see we could see where that cost burden is really stressed. So in the next slide, I'll show you how it, show you some maps of the Atlanta area. Well, Atlanta's in the outline there, since that's where we're coming from, although I'm in Chicago. But yeah, so the left-hand map shows the distribution of median household income by census block group in Atlanta, and you can see that there's some lower income communities in the southwest and higher income communities in the northeast, and so that's what we use to model transportation costs. On the right-hand map, we say, well, let's just fix. Everybody has the same income. We're going to stick the same household everywhere, and then we're going to estimate their costs. So the next slide should show what the model household transportation costs are. And you can see they're very different for the two maps. Because we know that household characteristics drive auto ownership, driving, and transit use, but so does place. So just like I showed in Madison, where you had a nice grid, you had a density of economic activity and transit accessibility, you can lower your transit. So on your transportation costs. So the right-hand map shows that. If I put the same household down in any place in the Atlanta area, you can see that downtown Atlanta sort of shows the most location efficient places where that household would spend the least. On the other hand, the left-hand map shows that it's also driven by the makeup of the household. In particular, income really drives that. So you remember the previous map where I showed the income in the southwest half or so of Atlanta shows lower income, and you can see that their transportation costs are lower. And that's the housing income. So go to the next map, and you can see sort of the result of this. So the left-hand map shows the transportation cost burden, and we'll show that I think with the GEM tool later, using different binning, so the color scheme doesn't quite line up perfectly, but you can see that the lower income households, even though their transportation costs when measured using the same household are fairly low, their burden is high because of the inadequate incomes or lower incomes that they're working with. Whereas we can see that Atlanta, the downtown is the most location efficient area, but then outskirts of Atlanta are pretty good. And if we zoomed out, you'd see and if you went to the Housing and Transportation Affordability Index website that we host, you could see that as you go out into a more rural area, the transportation, the location efficiency index, the housing and transportation affordability, the transportation component of that, it gets really high, gets above 29%. So next slide. So in summary, I'd just like to say, both transportation costs are driven by both the neighborhood and the household characteristics. We've shown that over the years. And in fact, spoiler alert here, the neighborhood characteristics actually are more highly correlated to auto ownership and driving than the household characteristics. We know that wealthy people will own 3 cars, but the same wealthy household in a community location efficient neighborhood will own less, 2 cars, 1 car. And so while each explains a lot about the transportation cost, neither tell the whole story. So you really need to look at the household makeup and the neighborhood. And so GEM can highlight where households are having high transportation cost burdens, and the H&T index can help inform why those are high. Not only is the income, but it's also the neighborhood characteristics that really make that up. So with that, I'll switch it back to you, Samantha.
Yeah, so we're going to actually go over to Karen, and she's going to talk to us about the city of Phoenix and some of her insights.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. So good morning to those in the West Coast and good afternoon for those on the East Coast. My name is Karen Apple. I'm the EV Program Manager for the City of Phoenix in the Office of Sustainability. And again, I want to thank Jim for letting me be here today and talk about, or not Jim, Green Analytics for letting me talk a little bit about the City of Phoenix's e-mobility equity project. I've been in this role for 3 years, and equity is a huge focus of the mayor and council. So we, for the last 8 months, have embarked on a community listening session tour where we used some of tools like the GEM tool to help us understand where we needed to go within the city to have these e-mobility equity sessions. So we looked at zero car households. We used the Justice 40 tool to highlight the low income and the highly economic burdened areas. So the tools like the GEM just help us further substantiate why we need to go look at these areas and be able to defend where we looked at based on all of this data. So it's a really helpful tool. So we created an e-mobility equity map based on some of these tools. We conducted 8 listening sessions in, we had 16 meetings in 8 sections of the city of Phoenix. And let me just give you a little overview of Phoenix. We are the 5th largest city in the United States, and we cover 517 square miles. So I'm 50 miles from tip of the city to the bottom of the city, 1.8 million residents, and we're very car dependent. And density is at a premium around here. We like to build out, not up. So while our downtown core is very dense, the rest of the 517 square miles is not dense. So a lot of auto dependency. And certainly, I think 60% of Phoenix is in a low income disadvantaged area. So anyway, we had these listening sessions between June and November, 16 workshops, both in English and Spanish. We had over 1,000 attendees, and a couple reasons why I think we had such good attendance is we gave out gift cards, we provided food, and we provided childcare when the need arose. And the main goal of these sessions was to understand how people move in their community. Do they take a car? Do they take transit? Do they walk? Do they bike? How do they move? Where do they go within their community? Where are their destinations? Is it churches? Is it shopping centers? Is it schools? And again, how do they get there? And then after we listened to them and gleaned all of that data, we did follow-up sessions with them and asked them, here are a set of options the city could potentially provide to you to meet some of your needs. It included things like shaded bus stops, potentially doing an electric car and e-scooter boundaries, having discounted vouchers for rideshare, which is Uber, Lyft, and or Waymo. We have Waymo here in Phoenix. So understanding what would best meet their needs. And we also partnered with a community-based organization to help us facilitate and structure these meetings and do our attendance, get the invites out to those trusted members of the community that that could attend our meetings. So we're working on the follow-up report, and then we'll be working with one of a chosen and selected community to host a funded pilot project, mobility project in that neighborhood. So we're still working on the follow-up data, but bottom line was we needed tools like the GEM to help us understand where to focus our resources and our attention, because we didn't want to go out to an area that wasn't an equity focused area. So I'm anxious to go over the GEM tool here after I get done chatting and helping other municipalities or other organizations understand these tools are available, they're helpful, they can help your mayor and council understand where our equity areas are. Next slide, please. There might be a lag because the slide's not moving. Hello?
Karen, it looks
Yeah.
like Some people are frozen. Who's doing the slides for you?
Greenlink.
Yeah, let me see. Samantha, are you here? She may have lost connection. One sec. I am not sure. Let's see if she can. Karen, give me 1 second. I'm to pull up my
Yeah.
screen and share because it looks like she's frozen. So give me 1 sec, technical difficulties. In the meantime, if you guys have any questions with what's been said thus far, this might be a good little intermission.
Yeah, and it's okay if you can't get my slides back up. I think it was just a map showing our targeted areas for our outreach. And one of the interesting things working here at Phoenix is I went to different departments within the city and asked them if they had equity maps. And some folks kind of looked at me in bewilderment about, what do you mean? What are you talking about? So we were pretty excited to build our own map and know that we have something that's justifiable and data-based that we can share with mayor or council and or the public about why we selected the areas that we did. There is data behind it: income, transportation burden, zero car households, EV charging desert. So we added those kinds of layers in. So it wasn't just a random selection. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so just get the whole city of Phoenix in a map since we are so long. But it was just to highlight some of the background data under the map and how we highlighted the neighborhoods that we focused on. So unless anybody's got a question for me, I'm more than happy to maybe launch into the gym tool. And again, feel free to contact me if you've got any questions. I tell folks all the time, we're in this together. We're all learning the same. So don't feel afraid if you don't know something. There's lots of tools, Jim being one of them, and it's very helpful. Lots of resources out there, especially in the EV section and focus and space.
Thanks, Karen. I don't see any questions so far, so please feel free to launch into the demo.
Yeah.
I don't see any questions yet. Thank you.
All right, here. So trying to multitask here. But thank you so much, Karen. Sorry for that technical difficulty around your slides. But as always, guys, we follow up with the recorded presentation as well as all the material with you, and we follow up after this presentation. So all this information you can have for yourself. But we are now going to move into our little breakouts to check out some gym. So you can actually get in there yourself if you want to pull up gym.equitymap.com. And that will bring you here. So I will put that in the chat, or someone in my team can put that in the chat here. And that should take you to Gym. And then this is the user and password that we have for today. So even if you don't have a membership, you are able to get into the map itself. Thank you. And it's .org. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. Looks like we have Sammy back. Hi, Sammy.
Apologies, I don't know why it kicked me out.
All good. We're moving on. So you let me know if I'm following the agenda well, but we're going to go into Gym. So if once people get in there, if I could get a thumbs up from you on your screen, or if you want to let us know in the chat that you're in there, please let us know.
I'm going to go ahead and pause recording for this.
As well, or?
Yes, definitely. I'm going right now through a planning exercise on where all of my city facilities are located. So parks, libraries, public garages, museums, anything the city owns that I have control over. We don't have a lot of city-owned facilities in the South or the Southwest, but we just built out all of our libraries with EV chargers. So we're looking at whether it's public investment or private investment to put more chargers in these areas, absolutely, to help drive adoption.
Great, thanks.
Because we certainly have charging deserts in these areas.
Could you talk a little bit more about how you define a charging desert? I mean, I know, when we think about transit deserts, sometimes we think, well, there's no transit there, but then, and there are some places where it wouldn't be smart to put transit there. No one lives there,
Sure.
et cetera. So there's a sort of
Sure.
a demand and a need curve that needs to be sort of looked at. I was wondering how you assessed where you would see and is that part of your meetings that you had for people to sort of weigh in as to what sort of charging infrastructure they think they need in their communities?
Yeah, yes, that was a small piece of it. So a tool for folks on the call, Department of Energy, DOE, Alternative Fuels Data Center, AFDC, they have an electric tab you can click on. And you can sort by state the EV chargers in your state. So I pull up all of the chargers in a state and I get rid of anything that doesn't have Phoenix as a city tagged to it. So that, and you can download into, I believe, an Excel shareable, exportable file. And my GIS team was able to put that layer into GIS, and I could populate my maps with where all of the charger stations that were identified on the Alternative Fuels Data Center, and just little red dots pop up. And so there are plenty of areas in the city that are, and that's not just city chargers, that's private investment chargers as well. And I can see clearly where there are no red dots in the city. So then when we ask our communities, first and foremost, ask them how they get around. And some folks aren't even aware of an electric vehicle. So we have to dispel some of those myths and get some education about EVs out there, and then help them understand, here's this different kinds of chargers, here's the cost of an electric vehicle. So our solution wasn't just solely someone purchasing a vehicle. It was, would a car share, a ride share, transit vouchers help people get around? So we know there's different solutions for different folks in our communities. Where our goal is to minimize greenhouse gas emissions and improve air quality, because we in Phoenix are in non-attainment for, I believe it's SOX, PM10. So if we don't clean up this air, we're not only have health impacts, we have economic impacts. So we understand electric vehicles are just one solution to pollution. So that's my role, is helping get a cleaner solution for mobility out there. So Sam, do you want to walk us through this slide that's up? Uh-oh.
No, I'm here. I just was muted that time. Zoom didn't kick me out. So right now, I just have it set up so you can see the data layer in GEM. For those of you who haven't seen it before, you can search locations in this top bar up here where it says search places, and then you can select different indicators. The transportation burden indicator is the newest indicator. That's why we're here talking with these amazing people today to give more insights on that. And on this right-hand side, you'll see the legend, which the color coding explains itself here, but the darker the color, the higher the transportation burden that the communities are experiencing here. And then this shows the percentage of median income a census tract spends on transportation costs. And we worked with the Center of Neighborhood and Technologies and got a lot of the information from working with Peter and Shar, our data scientist and team. So yeah, those some insights to this. Oh, geez. Nope, that's the back end. Excuse me. Too many things to click here. But I wonder if I saw some questions in the chat. Maybe this is a good time. I wanted to encourage people to come off mute if you want to ask your question to Karen and Peter.
Yeah.
And if not, go ahead.
Yeah. So I
yeah.
have a question from Mina about
Yes.
heat. So yeah, heat is a huge issue here in Phoenix. As you know, we've had like 30 days of over 110. We actually have a dedicated office to heat resiliency. And actually, heat resiliency team went out with us when we did our listening sessions because we've got some grant money to plant trees. So we wanted to understand where our community, low income and burdened neighborhoods would want some trees planted, and or where we could also potentially do some shaded bus stops. So we've got some funding in terms of heat. I know there is a layer in GEM, Urban Heat Index, and Urban Tree Canopy. And correct me if I'm wrong, Sam, but this tool allows you to overlay different tools on top of each other. So
Yeah.
Mina, that might be a really good opportunity if we overlay transportation burden with heat, which
I'm doing
again,
that right now.
we have a lot of heat islands around here. That's what's really nice is that you can do layerings with this tool. To help drive,
And if you can
data
see my
urban
screen.
decisions. Yeah, we see greens and yellows, and blues.
Okay, cool. Sorry, Karen, I was having a little lag on my end, but yeah, so
that's okay.
you'll see as Karen was explaining the change here, and this should still be transportation burden. Let me just make sure it is. Might have to refresh my screen, but it should be intersecting transportation burden and urban heat index now, and then you'll see that the legend changed, and so those who are experiencing the highest burdens of the intersects between these the data information in here are going to be this really dark yellow. Again, I click on something and it takes me there. Okay. Mina, is there another question in the chat?
Not that I can see. Things in the chat have been addressed. But if folks please come off mute or raise your hand, or you can add other questions in the chat, but we'd love to hear from you.
And I think one of the questions too was the data sources. Can Sam or someone talk to, and or Peter talk to data sources that are used?
Well, I can start off that. Yeah, so we kind of skipped over this one slide that showed so our model of how we look at this. So what our basic model statistics comes from the American Community Survey, the 5-year rolling average. So we drill down to block groups. We look at auto ownership, and then we look at transit use for the journey to work. And then for driving, we have a data set that we get from the state of Illinois, which we model and then apply that model nationwide. So, and we've shown that that is fairly accurate, not even fairly accurate, it's really accurate, it's, above 80% R squared. And when applied and when looked at the national transportation survey, it matches quite well. So yeah, so what we do is like I showed in that, well, there's that one slide that shows all of the input variables, both the community, the neighborhood variables, plus and the household variables that drive driving and transit use, and then we price those out and come up with the cost. Now, you asked about the currency of the data. It is 2019 right now. We are looking to update that this summer, and it should be 2022 by the end of the summer, and we'll share those data. So Jem can reflect that issue, those issues, anything that just changed. Does that answer your question? I hope.
Yeah, and then to piggyback off of that, thank you, Peter. But the data we have in GEM right now is 2019 data, and we're currently working on a 2021 refresh for that. So that should be launched in a couple months here. So yeah, get excited.
And for those municipalities or anybody else on the line that when you're applying for grants and you have to use Justice 40, one of the questions I asked the Greenlinks team was, does their tool include the Justice 40 layers? That's what I've understood the feds require us to use when we are identifying underserved low-income neighborhoods. And the answer to that was
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I was
Yes.
pulling back up the tool.
There we go. Yep.
Go ahead, Jelly.
I was just gonna say, so we did add the disadvantaged communities layer that's in here, and we aggregated that to the census tract level, so it could get a little bit more granular at the certain neighborhoods that would also be, as you can identify the neighborhoods that would be in the disadvantaged communities category from the CGIS tool. So, and all the indicators I have in here, we also have in GEM. So you can overlay all of that, and every census tract will let you know if it indeed does land in a disadvantaged community or not. So there you go. Same, we can show it now. It's always going to pull up that census tract. It's always going to pull up the households and the income, and then it will also always tell you now, is it in a disadvantaged community or not, based off of the federal requirements. So we actually just got done working with some MSAs around climate pollution reduction grants, and they needed to identify this as requirements for their LIDAC applications and other parts of the application. So our proposals. So yeah, it's been very helpful for that. So thank you for bringing that up, Karen. There's your answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I knew the answer. I just wanted everyone else to hear it. Yeah, so just know that you've got this tool at your disposal to help you with your planning, modeling, where you might want to, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Jelly, but these are also printable.
Yeah,
Cut
so
and
if you
paste into PowerPoints, things like that.
correct. So if you go over to download, Samantha, you can actually see, you can download the entire data. So it pulls up the data for the entire county, and it's going to pull all of that data for you in a CSV file. And also going to, if you want to take screenshots of the map, you can take a PNG format, and it's going to be high quality for any presentation that you need, like today, or anything for a report that you may need for your city. So for organization.
Yeah, and one comment off that, it downloads the map and the data. The legend, however, we're working to update, so it'll download that hopefully in the future for you to make it easier for inserting your maps. But for now, you can definitely screenshot that or write a comment about explaining what you're looking at in the map specifically for your grants or whatever else you're applying. We have a question in the chat. Is this a Shinny app? I'm not sure. Jelly, you look like you understood that.
No, I'm not sure if it's Shinny or Shiny either. And then the so Shar is off mute. She would know the actual platform that we upload all of this in, so I'll let her talk.
Yeah, this isn't, I think it's Shiny. This is not Shiny, but we work with third-party developers, and they basically create this platform. So it's a combination of, JavaScript, some Python, and like different mapping interfaces combined into one. So the short and sweet answer is no.
And I guess a follow-up to Ryan, and thanks for Pima County being on, fellow state staffer. Would this be an easy tool on a phone to read? Have you guys checked it on a phone or mobile, tablet?
Yeah, we haven't created the app version of it yet. You can try and pull it up, but it's not super conducive to
Sure.
scrolling on your phone. But that's something that we have entertained the idea for, but we're not quite there yet. So the best version is to look at it on your laptop or a computer
Gotcha.
screen.
Okay.
Can I ask this silly question, I think? Your data is really county driven, right? So when we're looking at Atlanta, we're looking at Fulton County. We're not looking at the part of Atlanta that's in DeKalb County, and the other, I forget the other county. I know Atlanta's in 3 counties. So that's why it tails off to the southwest, right? Even though it's outside of Atlanta, is that correct? So even if when I put Chicago in, for instance, I see all of Cook County, which Chicago is completely within. But I also see the other suburbs as well, which is good. It gives you context of not only the municipality, and I think the Atlanta, the Phoenix example was good in that regard too, because you could see what was going on south and west in Maricopa County. Yeah, bringing up Chicago, yeah.
Yeah, so in GEM, we have the option, the way that the data is visualized and the way that the scale works. The color scale, the heat map that we have on the legend on the right-hand side is basically just we represent it based on a county level, and that's kind of like the region that we can show at one given time. So like, for example, Atlanta, like you said, Peter, is like split among multiple counties. So in order to see the part that's cut off, you do have to scroll over to DeKalb County as an example for our city. But yeah, Chicago's a great example where like all of Cook County is shown here, and like all of the Chicago city boundaries fit in Cook County as well.
A little bit of O'Hare is in another county, but it doesn't really count. It's just a runway.
O'Hare is its own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we have any other questions from participants? Staff? I don't see any more in the chat right now. Okay. One more call. Any other questions? Going once, going twice, third time. Okay. Well then, I will go ahead and share our last slide. It's mainly just thanking everyone who participated. So let me pull that up real quick. Okay. So thank you everyone for coming today. Thank you to Peter and Karen for sharing your wealth of knowledge and insights. Please feel free to reach out to all of us. Our emails are here. Thank you to Upright Consulting and Mina for helping us with the chat, T-Tech who helps us with the GEM platform, and everyone else. Please do reach out to us, connect with us. We are all here as resources and excited to work with you, and look forward to seeing what the work you all do around transportation burden and helping our communities. So again, thank you for coming and hope to see you next time.